the Circuit of Jerez in Spain. It's an iconic MotoGP track. It is where a lot of battles have been fought, especially this last corner. It's seen some epic battles. Rossi versus Gibernau, Lorenzo versus Marquez. Now this track is also very important for this company, Triumph. Why? Well, they became the official engine supplier for Moto 2 with their 765, and they started testing it. The first time the test happened was in 2019 at this very track. So that's the reason why the new Street Triple has been given to us at Jerez. Now you would expect that after this kind of MotoGP involvement or Moto 2 involvement, they would capitalize on that, build a track tool that's absolutely nuts. And believe me, they've actually done it. Supersport machines are unfortunately a dying breed, and it's a pity that despite being at the peak of their racing involvement, Triumph have axed the Daytona for good. So if you still want to go racing with a middleweight Triumph Triple, your only option is the Street Triple RS, a very accomplished motorcycle that is back in a practically all-new avatar for 2023. And it has even brought along an even twin in the stunning Moto 2 edition, which unfortunately is sold out and will not make it to India. Which means that you cannot have that shiny piece of suspension on your Street Triple RS, because you see this gold standard from Öhlins is only available on this limited edition 765, and they're limiting it to only 765 units each, one in this white color and the other in the Rossi yellow, and they've all been spoken for. Now you cannot retrofit this on your machine purely because Triumph will not sell these to you, because apart from the suspension, what's also exclusive to this bike are the clip-on handlebars and the triple clamps, and the triple clamps have the limited edition numbering on them. So Triumph will not sell it to you unless you give them proof of ownership or proof of damage, which means it's next to impossible to get this suspension on your Street Triple. So if you are serious about racing, you will have to figure out your own installation, modification, mounts, etc. And if you do manage to do that, the good news is you can also slap on the fairing of the Daytona, not just on this bike, but also on the standard Street Triple RS. And then you can go racing with it. In fact, Triumph already has been doing that, and they're pretty successful at it. Coming back to the Street Triple RS, it is now the range topper now that the Moto 2 editions are sold out worldwide. Compared to the base Street Triple R, the RS can be identified with its exclusive paint options like the wine red seen here. But if I was buying, it wouldn't be the red, it wouldn't be the grey, it would be this yellow, inspired from the yesteryear Triumph 955i. Not that I love that motorcycle, I just love this color. The belly pan and the bar end mounted wing mirrors are another giveaway that this is the RS. But both these components can also be retrofitted on the R. Now, you may not notice it visually. However, the rear end of the motorcycle has been lifted slightly compared to the regular Street Triple R. Now what they've done is they have a spacer on top of the rear suspension that gives it this angle. Also the rake angle is much sharper now. So essentially the seat height has gone up by 10 millimeters. So it is a bit of a perch, like is the case with the Speed Triple as well. But the narrower tank and the narrower seat makes the Street Triple RS quite friendly. However, if you think that 836 millimeters of seat height is going to be quite tall, well, you can always remove that spacer and get the seat to go down again. You also have a low seat option, which is essentially the same kind of seat, but it runs a 3D mesh in the cushioning and is a slimmer seat. That is how they get the lower seat option. It doesn't really play around much with the ground clearance, so the dynamics shouldn't be affected by much. That said, the sharper rake angle and the higher or the taller rear end of the motorcycle has been designed to give the Street Triple RS much sharper handling dynamics when you're attacking corners, when you're entering corners at a higher speed, you get faster turn-ins, etc. compared to the Street Triple R. And removing that spacer, getting the seat lowered again, is going to hamper the dynamics to an extent.
may not be a big difference, but it will hamper it to an extent. So you'll have to sort of find that balance. With the sharper rake, you also get a shorter wheelbase, a marginally shorter wheelbase on the RS compared to the R. So what that essentially means is, because it's a more aggressive riding posture, you're putting more weight on the front, so the front doesn't feel too floaty, it will not wheelie that easily despite the shorter wheelbase. And because the wheelbase is shorter, it also means that the bike feels quite stable even through the corners. It still feels quite agile, even if you're putting a lot of weight on the front. There's still enough traction. You don't feel the traction control kicking in or the bike struggling for traction. In fact, here at the Jerez, it was superb. I mean, some of the straights, you're doing more than 200 kilometers an hour. You're battling the wind resistance. You are feeling all that wind on your chest, on the helmet, everything's moving, but the bike isn't. The bike is rock solid and stable, and that is what I love about it. Despite being so light, it feels very agile, and at the same time, it feels very stable. The cornering stability is amazing. In fact, I don't remember when was the last time I was laughing so much inside my helmet with a middleweight naked. That's how good the new Street Triple RS is.
What allows you to push the bike harder still is the new suite of electronics which now use a 6-axis IMU from Continental. It brings along stuff like wheelie control, but more importantly, there is a less intrusive traction control system now, which works discreetly on the road, as we found out on the Street Triple R, and even on the track, you won't see the traction control light coming on that often. The RS also goes a step ahead with the track mode, which allows the bike to have a certain degree of slip before the traction control will kick in. There's also a revised gearbox with a taller first and shorter subsequent gears. The low-end torque isn't as on tap as a KTM 790 or 890 Duke, but that also means the Street Triple continues to feel easy to ride to the groceries. While on the track, the mid-range pull is exceptional and allows you to ride in higher gears without falling out of the power band or without messing up the drive out of corners. A superb tuning of the slipper clutch also allows you to hammer in the downshifts for excellent engine braking for attacking corners that follow long straights, like the C1 or the C6 at Jerez.
Like the Street Triple R, even the brakes get the combined ABS system, which means that if you're applying only the front brake, a part of the rear brake is also applied so that it stabilizes the bike. But when you're on the track, you have a different track map for the anti-lock brakes, which means that it completely disables the combined braking system. You still get ABS on the front and the rear, but both the brakes work independently of each other, so you can choose what kind of braking pressure and braking bias you want on the fly, right? It's not an electronic system, it's all down to your own skill. But the good part is that you do not feel the kind of pulsations that you would feel on the RS when you were really pushing it hard on the previous model. On the new one, the braking feels a lot more confident, especially on the back straight. You're doing over 200 kilometers an hour, again battling that wind, but then you are braking hard for a very tight right-hander. And it sort of shows the confidence, not only in the braking system, but in the overall handling dynamics of the new Street Triple RS. So this intelligent Moto 2 derived system also understands the difference between a trail braking or a hard braking maneuver for a corner versus a panic braking or a wheel lock. So it will adjust the ABS pressure accordingly, and that really works.
We had 3 20-minute sessions at the track, and even as I picked up pace, there was no brake fade to complain about. By the third session, we also got a stiffer suspension setup that, coupled with the track time, allowed me to exploit higher lean angles and faster corner exits. It is a rewarding feeling when two corners become one, like the C3 and C4. Or the C11 and C12. And it is a big feat when a naked motorcycle like this gives you the required speed and stability to make this transition happen.
You could also dial up the stiffness on the suspension because now you also have stickier rubber, the Pirelli Super Corsa SP version 3. So what that gives you is much better confidence even if you're running a much stiffer setup. Now here in Spain, today at least, it was quite chilly in the morning. They had to run tire warmers on it, but the track itself was quite cold. It wasn't really the ideal warm track that you would want for a bike like this. Despite that, the tires, they had a lot of confidence, and by the second or the third session, we could put a lot more trust in these tires. We could put a lot more trust in the suspension as well. And even through the course of the track sessions, you didn't really feel any extreme degradation of the tire or the suspension heating up too much. The overall dynamics of the motorcycle just felt the same from lap 1 to the last lap, and I think that is the biggest highlight of the motorcycle. All the premium equipment that you get on the bike actually works the way it's intended to when you're out on the racetrack. Now the bigger question, of course, is do you need the RS or the R? Now that is a story for another day, but let's now take it to the road and see how this one performs out in the real world.
The 41mm Showa front forks may look similar to the units on the R, but unlike those separate function forks, both these big piston forks on the RS get rebound, damping and compression adjustability to help you fine-tune the setup for the road or for the track.
Now while the suspension hardware has their own differences, the travel for the front is the same as the Street Triple R. However, the rear is marginally lesser. However, out on the road, we didn't really have a lot of potholes today, but we did come across some really uneven surfaces, almost 3 inch of elevation difference between the road and the shoulder. That's the kind of broken roads that we've ridden on, and anyone who loves sport riding will know that is a scary kind of a road to ride on. And honestly, I actually felt the RS, which is a track bike, was actually better on the road around these kind of twisties than the Street Triple R. And that's because the suspension actually feels more premium. It actually feels more superior to what the R is. I think the separate function versus adjusting the damping, the rebound on both the legs of the forks makes a lot of difference. So yeah, this is the better suspension even for the road.
Even the more aggressive riding posture of the RS doesn't seem uncomfortable on the road, and our 100-kilometer ride felt like a breeze.
So you might recall me saying in the past that the Stylemma calipers are a bit too much for the road. They are great on the track, but on the road they can end up feeling a bit too grabby, a bit too much braking hardware for a motorcycle like this. But Triumph have fixed that. They now have the Stylemma on a Street Triple, and they've also mated it to the MCS system from Brembo. The magic has really worked because what you get is a more progressive feel. It doesn't feel as grabby as the typical Triumph motorcycles with Stylemma calipers do. It feels a lot more confident, and even on the broken roads that I was talking about, I was super happy with the performance. Again, just like the track, there was no brake fade to complain about. We've done some really hard riding on the road today, gone through a lot of bad patches as well, and you know, there's been a bit of panic braking here and there as well once in a while, and still the brakes have just impressed me. So I am super happy with the way they have tuned the braking even for the road for the RS.
In a nutshell then, I would say that if you've been missing the option of having a cracker of a middleweight motorcycle now that most of the 600s are dead or discontinued, I think the Street Triple 765 RS will suit your purpose, whether you're riding on the road or the track or a bit of both, because this motorcycle is a phenomenal package and a great balance between the two.
To sum it up, previously I had said that it's a very simple comparison between the R and the RS. If you are going to be doing a lot of road riding, the R is the one to go for. If there is a bit of track riding involved, the RS is what you want. If you're only going to be doing track riding, then RS is the one to go for, and then maybe do a few modifications here and there for whatever suits you. But this time around, I think even though I know the R is going to be the higher selling variant, that's going to be the more popular choice, if I had to spend my money or if I had to recommend a Street Triple to someone today, it would be the RS, because that superior suspension, the superior brakes, which are ideally track bred, they also work superbly on the road. And then the engine, it just feels crisper. The throttle response is much crisper. The power delivery is so much nicer. It just feels like a nicer package compared to the R. I don't want to take anything away from the R. I think it's the most value for money offering in the Street Triple lineup, but the RS is the one you want to spend that extra money on. This is the one to go for if you had to choose between the two.